At 3:17 in the morning, a 58-year-old homeless veteran was on his knees in the dirt of Cellar he'd owned for exactly 9 days, digging with his bare hands because his dog wouldn't stop screaming at the door. He'd paid $1 for this house. One. The whole town had laughed, and what that dog was about to drag out of the ground would make every single one of them stop laughing, but nobody knew that yet. To understand what happened at 3:17 that morning, you have to go back 573 days. Back to the night Marcus Bell had nothing left but a truck and a name he barely answered to anymore. Marcus Bell was 58 years old, 2 tours, a bad hip that clicked every time he stood, and a limp that got worse in the cold. He'd worn the uniform for 11 years, come home with a folded flag from a friend's funeral and a spine that would never sit straight again, and for a while, he'd been fine. He had a house. He had a job driving a delivery route. He had a wife named Diane who called him Soldier when she was teasing him and Baby when she wasn't. Then Diane died. 14 months before this story starts, a stroke took her at the kitchen table on a Tuesday, and by the time Marcus got home, the coffee she'd poured was cold. After that, things came apart in the quiet way things come apart. He missed work. Then he missed more work. Then there was no work. He filed the VA paperwork that was supposed to catch him, and the paperwork got lost, and then it got lost again, and a man who had bled for his country spent 8 months on hold with a country that couldn't find his file. The bank took the house, and Marcus Bell, decorated soldier, moved into the only thing he had left that nobody could repossess. A 1994 Ford pickup with 214,000 miles on it, and a heater that only worked if you hit the dash. He lived in that truck for 573 days. Read that number again. Not a weekend, not a rough month. 573 nights folded into a driver's seat, his knees against the wheel, a wool blanket that smelled like every gas station parking lot in 3 counties. He ate on $3.86 a day because that was what was left after gas once the disability check finally started trickling in, and most of that went to a can opener's worth of whatever was cheapest. He stopped shaving. He stopped answering when people called his name, because mostly the only people who called his name were the officers tapping the window at 2 a.m. telling him he couldn't park there. He became a shape people looked past, a man the town had already decided was finished. That was Marcus Bell on the morning he saw the flyer. It was stapled to a telephone pole outside the county courthouse. A tax auction, a list of properties the county wanted off its books, seized for back taxes nobody had paid in years. And at the bottom, one line that made him stop walking. Parcel 44, a 1911 farmhouse. 3 acres. Opening bid, $1. $1. Because the back taxes on it were $41,000, and the house itself was condemned. No plumbing, a caved-in porch, a roof half open to the sky. The county wasn't selling a house. They were trying to hand off a debt, and the price of the house was $1 because the real price was inheriting everything wrong with it. Marcus had exactly $1. He'd been saving it, folded into quarters and a crumpled single, for a coffee he kept telling himself he'd earned. He stood in front of that flyer for a long time. $1 house was still a roof. $1 house was still walls that didn't roll away when a cop knocked. $1 house was an address, and a man with no address may as well be a ghost. He went to the auction. The room was small and full of men in good coats. Developers, mostly. Flippers with clipboards and calculators, there for the good parcels. The ones with clean titles and easy resale. When the auctioneer got a parcel 44, he practically apologized for reading it out loud. 1911. No septic. Structural condemnation on file. $41,000 in arrears assumed by the buyer. He said it the way you describe a disease. "Do I have $1?" he said, and he was already reaching for his gavel to move on. "Do I have $1 for parcel 44? Nobody moved. A couple of the men laughed under their breath. And then a hand went up in the back of the room. A hand with dirt in the creases of the knuckles, attached to a man in a coat 2 seasons too thin. "I've got $1, Marcus said. The room turned around, and that's when the laughing stopped being under their breath. One man laughed out loud. He was young, maybe 40, in a coat that cost more than Marcus's truck was worth. His name was Cole, and he ran a development company that had already scooped up 3 of the good parcels that morning. He looked Marcus up and down, the beard, the limp, the coat, and he smiled the way a man smiles when he thinks he's the only one in the room who understands math. "Buddy," Cole said, loud enough for everyone. "You know that place will kill you before winter, right? No heat, no water. 40 grand in taxes. You'll be back living in that truck by October, except now you'll owe the county." The auctioneer, not unkindly, leaned into the mic. "Sir, I have to advise you. This property is condemned. Uninhabitable. The tax burden transfers to you the moment you sign." Marcus kept his hand up. "Still more than a truck," he said. "Going once. Going twice." The gavel came down, and for $1 a homeless veteran became the legal owner of the worst house in the county, while a room full of men who'd never slept in a truck a single night in their lives shook their heads and went back to their clipboards. Marcus signed the papers with a pen that didn't work at first. His hand was shaking, not from fear, from something he hadn't felt in 14 months. The paperwork called it a transfer of title. Marcus would have called it the first thing that was his since Diane. But this story isn't really about the house. It never was. Because 2 weeks before the auction, on a rainy Thursday, Marcus Bell had made another decision that everyone told him was a mistake. He'd stopped at a county shelter to use the bathroom. That was all. And on his way out, he passed a run at the very end of the row, and in the back of it, pressed into the corner like he was trying to become part of the concrete, was a dog. A shepherd mix. Big frame, but you could count the ribs through the coat. 31 pounds underweight, the intake sheet would say. One ear was torn down to a ragged stub, and around his neck, worn into the fur and the skin beneath it, was a raw pink ring, the exact shape of a chain that had been on too tight for too long. They'd found him chained to a fence post 4 feet from a highway. 4 feet. Cars going 70, close enough to feel the wind off them, and a dog tied there with no water and no shade and no way to back up out of the noise. He was deaf in his left ear from an infection nobody had ever treated. He flinched at raised hands, and he had been returned by 3 different families before he ever reached that shelter. Not 1, not 2. 3 families looked at that dog and gave him back. The shelter had named him Chief because a volunteer thought he looked dignified, and dignified was a hard thing to hold on to in a place like that. When Marcus stopped at the run, Chief lifted his head, just his head, and the two of them looked at each other through the chain link for a long moment. A man the world had folded up and put away, and a dog the world had done the same thing to, and something passed between them that neither one had a word for. "You don't want that one," the shelter worker said. She wasn't being cruel. She was being honest, which is sometimes worse. "He's old. He's jumpy. He flinches if you move too fast. 3 families already brought him back. He won't bond, sir. Some of them, the door just closes and it doesn't open again." She sighed. "Honestly, that dog's done. That dog's done." Marcus stood very still when she said it, because those were the exact words. Not close. The exact words the world had been using on him for 573 days. Too old. Too broken. Too far gone to fix. Done. He looked at Chief. Chief looked back. "I'll take him," Marcus said. She started to explain again. He was already reaching for the leash. The first night, Chief wouldn't eat from Marcus's hand. Marcus held out a piece of bread from a gas station sandwich, and the dog stared at it like it was a trap, because in his experience, a hand held out was usually a hand about to hurt him. Marcus set the bread down and looked away, and only then, only when he wasn't watching, did he hear the soft sound of it being taken. Day 1, Chief ate off the floor. Day 6, he took bread from Marcus's fingers. Gently, barely a brush of teeth. Marcus sat in the truck holding his own hand like it was made of glass, afraid to move and break whatever this was. By week 2, Chief slept at the foot of the cot in the truck bed instead of pressed against the far door. Marcus would wake at 3 a.m. The way he always did, heart going, reaching for a rifle that wasn't there, and there would be a warm weight against his feet and a torn ear tilting toward him in the dark, and somehow that was enough to lie back down. And then came the dollar house. And that's when Marcus first noticed the ritual. Every single night at 9:40, not 9:30, not 10 o'clock, 9:40, Chief would get up. He'd walk the whole perimeter of that broken-down farmhouse once slow, nose down to the dirt, the way an old soldier walks a fence line. And then he'd come back to the same spot every time. The cellar door, a rusted, half-rotted set of storm doors set at an angle against the foundation. So old the wood had gone soft and gray. Chief would lie down across those doors, put his chin on his paws, and only then would he let himself sleep. Marcus thought it was just an old dog's habit. Every dog's got their spot. He figured Chief liked the cool of the stone. By month 2, the two of them had patched half a roof. Marcus, hip clicking, hauling shingles one-handed up a ladder while Chief watched from below, and every night at 9:40, no matter how tired, no matter how sore, the dog did his circle and lay down on the cellar door. It never broke. Not once. Rain, cold. The night Marcus's hip gave out, and he had to crawl the last 10 feet to the cot. 9:40. Chief walked the fence line and took his post. I want to stop here for 1 second. I see you're still here. Still watching. And still, I notice not subscribed. And I'll be honest with you. That stings a little. Because this whole channel is about the ones everybody gave up on, and it takes about 1 second to say, I'm not giving up on this. Chief never gave up on a single person in his life, and 3 families gave up on him. So if you've got it in you, hit that button. Then come right back, because it's about to get bad before it gets good. The doubt came walking up the driveway in the shape of Cole. Yeah, that Cole, the developer from the auction. He bought the parcel next door for pennies too, planning to flip it, and he drove by one afternoon and saw something that made him stop his truck. Chief was at the cellar door, but not lying on it. He was clawing at it, digging at the seam where the 2 rotted doors met, front paws going, and when Marcus came around the house, he saw that the dog had worn the pads of his paws raw. There was blood on the gray wood, a thin, bright line of it. Cole leaned out his window and shook his head slow. That dog's not right, he said. Look at him, tearing himself up. That's not normal, Marcus. That's an unstable animal. You keep something like that around, sooner or later it turns on you. He paused. I've seen it. You'd be doing everyone a favor putting him down before he hurts somebody. Before he hurts you. And here's the part that's hard to say. For 1 second, 1 single second, Marcus almost believed him. Because he was tired. Because the dog was bleeding. Because a man who's been told he's broken for 573 days starts to believe he can only ever own broken things. He looked at Chief tearing at that door, and a small cold voice in the back of his mind said, maybe Cole's right. Maybe the shelter was right. Maybe that dog's done. Then Chief stopped, turned, looked at Marcus with those steady eyes over that torn stub of an ear. And Marcus said quiet, no, he's telling me something. He didn't know what. But he'd learned, in 11 years of service, that when something in your chest says the ground isn't right, you don't ignore it because a man in a nice coat tells you to. It got worse over the next 9 days. Chief stopped eating. The bread sat untouched. Day 2, he wouldn't sleep. Marcus would wake and find the dog standing at the cellar door in the dark, just standing, staring down at the wood like he could see through it. Day 4, the nails on his front paws split from digging. Day 6, the 9:40 ritual changed. Chief walked his circle, lay down on the door, and simply did not leave. Not at midnight. Not at 2 a.m. He lay across those doors like something was under them he was guarding the whole world from. And there was a sound, low in his chest. Not a growl. Marcus had heard him growl. This was underneath a growl. A sound Marcus had never heard from any animal. A sound like grief, and it went on in the dark hour after hour. And Marcus lay on his cot with his eyes open listening to his dog mourn something neither of them could see. On the 9th night it happened. 3:17 a.m. Marcus came awake to Chief screaming. Not barking. Screaming. A sound that put him on his feet before his brain caught up. Hip be damned. He grabbed the lantern. The cellar door was half torn off its hinges. Chief had ripped through rot and rusted iron with his own bleeding paws, and now he was down inside, in the dark, digging. Marcus went down the broken steps. He got on his knees in the dirt next to his dog. He didn't ask questions. He dug where Chief dug. Bare hands. Cold earth. 60 inches down in that black cellar. An old soldier and a torn-up dog clawing at the ground together. His fingers hit metal. Not a rock. Metal. Flat. A corner. He pulled the dirt back, and there was a box. A strong box. Iron. Rusted at the seams, but solid. Buried deep enough that no inspector, no realtor, no drifter in 40 years had ever come close. He dragged it loose. It was heavy, heavier than dirt. And Chief wasn't looking at the box. Chief was already 3 feet past it, digging at the cellar wall, at a section of stone that Marcus, holding up the lantern, suddenly saw was wrong. Newer mortar, a rectangle of it, a false wall built to look like the foundation, hiding what was behind it. Marcus pried at it. The stones came away easier than they should have, because whoever built it in a hurry. And behind a false wall was a cavity. And in the cavity was a canvas sack gone stiff with age, and a sealed tin, and papers wrapped in oilcloth. He opened the tin with shaking hands. Coins. Gold. Old ones, some of them from before 1911. The date carved over the farmhouse door. Silver dollars and rolls that had turned black. The papers in the oilcloth were deeds. The original deed to the house and the 3 acres. And 2 more parcels besides, land the county records had long since scrambled and lost. And a letter in a careful old hand from the man who built this place, explaining that he didn't trust banks after 1929, that he'd sealed his life's savings into the bones of his own house, and that he prayed whoever found it needed it more than he did. Marcus knelt there in the dirt and could not breathe. But Chief still wasn't done. The dog had moved to the far corner of the cellar, to a low wooden door Marcus had never even registered, half sunk into the earth, painted over the same gray as the walls. Chief stood in front of it and would not move. And when Marcus finally got it open, he understood the last piece. Behind that door was an old cistern, cracked and dry now, but the county's condemnation 40 years ago had been about a contamination scare tied to that very spot. A scare that was wrong, that a single water test would have cleared, but that no owner had ever been alive or willing enough to challenge. That was why the house sat abandoned. That was why the taxes climbed to $41,000. That was why it went for $1. A wrong answer nobody bothered to correct. For 40 years, the gold coins alone, when they were appraised, came to a figure that made the appraiser ask Marcus to sit down before he read it. Enough to pay the $41,000 in back taxes and have the condemnation lifted with the corrected water test. Enough to fix the roof for real, put in plumbing, a well, heat that worked. Enough that a man who'd eaten on $3.86 a day would never have to count coins into a gas station counter again. The rediscovered deeds returned 2 lost parcels of land to the property. The value of that dollar house, once the dust settled, ran well into the 6 figures. Word gets around a small town fast. Faster than good news usually travels. Cole came back, not laughing this time. He pulled his truck into a driveway that now had fresh gravel and a rebuilt porch, and he sat there behind the wheel for a while before he got out. Because this was the parcel he'd passed on. The dollar house he'd told a homeless man would kill him by winter. He'd bid on it once 2 years back when it was cheaper still and walked away because the math looked bad. He stood in Marcus's driveway, and he didn't have anything to say. For the first time, no clipboard math, no smile. He just looked at the house and at the shepherd mix asleep in the sun on the new porch boards. And then he got back in his truck and drove away. Some men apologized with words. Cole apologized by having none. And that shelter, the one that said that dog's done, got an envelope in the mail a few weeks later. No letter inside, just a photograph. Chief, 31 pounds heavier now, coat filled in, torn ear, and all, stretched out asleep on a real wooden porch in the afternoon light. So deep in the kind of sleep that only comes to something that finally feels safe. It's 3:17 a.m. again as I tell you this. A year later, the cellar door hangs on new hinges now, oiled quiet. Marcus Bell is asleep in a real bed, in a real room, under a roof that doesn't leak, and he sleeps more than 4 hours straight for the first time since Diane. And down the hall, at 9:40 every single night, an old shepherd Mick still gets up. He still walks the whole perimeter of the house once, nose to the ground, slow, an old soldier walking his fence line. And he still lies down for a moment by the cellar door before he comes to bed. Out of habit now, not warning. There's nothing left down there to guard against. But some things a body does because they kept it alive once. And Chief will do his circle until the day his legs won't carry him. And Marcus will let him, because Marcus knows exactly what it is to keep doing the thing that got you through. $1 bought Marcus a house. But it was the dog nobody wanted who bought him back his life. Some animals aren't broken. Some are just waiting for the one person who won't leave the door. So tell me in the comments, if you'd been in that auction room that morning, if it had been you standing in a coat too thin, with $1 folded in your pocket and a whole room laughing, would you have raised your hand for the dollar house? Yes or no? I already know what